Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Controlled Interests Gamecast, a video game podcast focused on good vibes, thoughtful criticism, and celebrating the things we love about them. I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche. This week on episode 275, I'm going to be rolling solo, no guests, just me. We have a fun show planned out. I'm going to be covering some stuff going on BlueSky, featuring head of Strange Scaffold, Xalavier Nelson, and then the topic of the show, I figured with us being a little bit more than a week out from the 30th anniversary Pokemon Day, I'd give some of my predictions for what I think is going to happen on that day. Other than that, not much else to talk about outside of what I played this week, which I'll also cover. But let's hop right into it. The Quickie news. So, over on BlueSky, there was a tweet from the developers of Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, and Xalavier Nelson, who is the head of Strange Scaffold, and all around creative on the internet. He does voice acting, he does a lot of stuff. He basically put his 2 cents in on this tweet, and it has to do with the RAM GPU prices affecting hardware specs. So, like I said, the developers of Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight basically put out, quote, "We have revised our recommended hardware specifications from 32 gigs of RAM down to 16 gigs of RAM." Pretty simple statement there, but Xalavier quoted this, and he responded on BlueSky saying, "This is going to happen a lot. Not just because things like the Steam Deck encourage a minimum viable hardware spec, but because a growing portion of our players cannot and will not be able to access major leaps in hardware. RAM and GPU prices are making the cutting edge player more rare." In the thread, he goes on to say, quote, "I love pointing people to the Steam hardware survey. Most people are gaming at 1080p right now. At 8 gigs of VRAM and 16 gigs of RAM, generative AI bullshit means the number of people who will be at that spec for the foreseeable future is pretty dang high." Adding, quote, "Nearly a quarter of Steam players do not have more than 250 gigs to spare across their machine. Tops, including other data they may use or need. That explicitly puts AAA high-capacity games like Call of Duty and NBA 2K at risk." End quote. It's a very interesting conversation to have, and I find this extremely relevant considering the recent reports that Sony is considering pushing back the release of the PS6 to 2028 or even 2029 for various reasons, but undoubtedly connected to the RAM shortage and escalation of manufacturing difficulties across the technology landscape. In my opinion, both Microsoft and Sony were going to be heading into the next generation with a difficult battle. Touting performance and visual leaps isn't convincing gamers the way it once did a decade ago, especially when most owners of the current gen consoles feel as if they haven't even reached their full potential yet. It was a hard enough sell, in my opinion, with normal console pricing, but now these corporations will demand nearly twice the price. And it feels like the smartest move is to milk the current user base, the install base, for as long as possible to provide these companies enough runway so things return to some semblance of normal. Though we know historically with surge pricing, things rarely come down to what they were pre-inflation. But what is more likely is that it gives them time to find tangible ways to justify the price point of their next living room entertainment boxes. They will be much more expensive. I doubt we're living in a world where the next Xbox and PlayStation are under $600. It just doesn't seem like it's going that way. And with the current state of things, they could be well near 1,000, if not over. And it'll be curious to see how things go because, to Xalavier Nelson's point, we're in a place now where the average consumer is A, getting priced out of the video game hobby and industry, and B, on the PC side of things, they just can't afford to be max specs on games. So now games are going to have to appeal to lower end systems, which is a good thing because even though there is a larger portion of people now that won't be able to game at max settings, it means that the people who have never or never will be able to do that still get, hopefully, quality out of their PC titles. Just wanted to throw that in there. I thought it was an interesting conversation. I think it's one that we're going to be having in the industry over the next 3 to 5 years as these next-gen consoles get revealed, their release dates come into focus, the technology landscape. We're not sure if we're going to be going into a recession very soon, and how the economy, specifically here in the United States, and obviously that will have ramifications for the global economy, will pan out over these next 3 to 5 years. And I think for better or worse, the gaming industry is going to be at the core of all of these changes, and it'll be drastically affected, um, much more significantly than it already has with layoffs and studio closures and such over the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens there. The link to that thread from Xalavier Nelson will be in the description on the YouTube upload. Definitely check it out. He has some very thoughtful things to say. He just said he was rambling, but honestly, he points out a lot of interesting stuff from a developer who's had a good amount of success here in the industry, and I always like to listen to hear their perspective on things. Next up, let's get to the topic of the show, the Pokemon Day predictions. With Pokemon Day 2026 on the horizon, I figured I'd give my predictions for what we might see on February 27th. I'm recording this on February 19th, hopefully uploading this on the 20th. So if anything gets announced between the 24 hours this gets recorded and uploaded, then it is what it is. But it is the franchise's 30th anniversary. So it's safe to say most fans expect a handful of eyebrow-raising announcements. In addition to the 4 predictions I came up with, I also have a couple of desired things that are not really likely, but would be huge wins for me personally, and I think to some extent to some parts of the Pokemon fandom. And I guess I'll start with those and get those out of the way before I talk about my predictions. So the first thing, I labeled this section as would be neat if. It would be neat if A, Pokemon TCG Pocket received a single player mode called Gym Challenge or Gym Challengers or something like that, where players can take on numerous gym leaders with varying levels of difficulty, and then players could earn cosmetics and or currency from completing them. You complete the Sabrina Gym Challenge, you get a Sabrina player icon or maybe sleeves for your cards, what have you. Obviously, this will likely be tied into some monetary gain on their end, but maybe the base challenges are free. I just think it'd be cool. I think it needs more single player stuff outside of the random challenges you get, and being able to battle the PC. I think adding some flavor, some characters from the anime, and the series in general would add a lot there, and I think a gym challenge could be really fun. Next up, it would be neat if Pokemon, in their ongoing partnership with LEGO, announced a collectible minifigure series. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the collectible minifigure series are these blind boxes that you can get. Some of them are themed. There was a Dungeons and Dragons one. There was a Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse one. Most of them are just general characters, like Lego characters, yellow brick, yellow skin, Lego minifigures. I think it'd be really cool if we got one that was a series for Pokemon. Now, it's unclear how they're going to be doing the minifigure size Pokemon. We've gotten the larger builds of the Pokemon, but we have yet to see minifigure size Pokemon. And it's unclear if they're doing something much more abstract with the designs, or if they're going maybe whole printed pieces for them. But you have the trainers like Ash and Misty and Brock that they could easily do in minifigure form. And I think it would be fun. Obviously, it would be a hot item. I think a lot of people would go after these blind boxes. And yeah, I just think we have the high-end stuff. Lego is much more expensive than people think. Even the smaller sets tend to go for, at best, at the cheapest, like $40. And these minifigure series, when they release, are a really awesome way to collect the minifigures and have a nice little collection. I usually, if there's a minifigure series that comes out that I like, I will pay the $30 and get a box of 6 of them, just because you're kind of guaranteeing that you're not going to get duplicates. And it's a fun time, and I think there's a lot more to explore with this LEGO partnership that Pokemon can really dive into. We're probably going to get brickheads at some point of maybe Ash and Pikachu. And I really think that the collectible minifigure series is one that has been underutilized in terms of the brand partnerships with LEGO. Like I said, there was a Dungeons and Dragons one. We've had a Marvel one for the Marvel TV series, which I really enjoyed. And I do think it's an avenue in which they can really provide a entry-level LEGO product for people who don't have the $50, $80, $100, $150 to spend on these more extravagant sets that are, depending on who you ask on the amount of pieces and stuff, are overpriced. which I do agree with. But um, yeah, I hope that they announce some more stuff, and more specifically the collectible minifigure series. The last would be neat if the Pokemon Company put better systems in place to combat scalping, so the hobby of opening and collecting the trading cards was accessible once again for families, children, and just normal people, to be quite honest. Like, I have nothing against the hobby being in a place it is where there's collectors. Obviously, the recent thefts on major stores is unfortunate, but it is it's turned into a business and less of a hobby. Um, I myself, personally, I have a binder for each generation of Pokemon, and I'm trying to get at least a card for every Pokemon that exists. When I can, I try to pick up, illustration rares or really cool cards that I like that replace the base level Pokemon card I have in them. I think that's a fun time. Even me, who has a decent amount of, disposable income, has a tough time finding stuff for relatively affordable prices. I'm not going to be spending $80 to $100 on a bundle when they MSRP usually go for 60, $50. I'm not going to do that. And I know some people might argue, well, that's just the price it is now. Even packs is hard to find in the wild because people, for every person who's buying them to open them and enjoy them, even if they go and get them graded, that's your prerogative. There are the people who scoop up everything and then they sell it for exorbitant prices on eBay or other selling sites. And it's a bummer because I've met kids who are like, "Oh, I'd love to get Pokemon cards, but it's so hard." And it's just we're at a place now where it's easier for people to just go and order, you know, Japanese printed Pokemon cards, which is fine. It's cool. I collect Japanese cards as well. I'm just saying, in terms of accessibility, there's not a way that's awesome for families and children to experience the hobby in a tangible way if they don't have the kids don't have parents who are bringing in six figures a year. It just hasn't. It's moved from a layman's every man hobby of checking out TCG to now it's like, oh well, do you have money? Then you can enjoy it. If not, sorry, you're kind of screwed, which is a bummer. Pokemon as a franchise should be able to be enjoyed by people of all walks of life, all financial situations, and I do think that children, at the end of the day, should be the ones that should be able to enjoy it above anyone else. And if you want to turn that into a business, a collecting thing, sure. But at its baseline, we shouldn't have scalpers going into these stores, scooping up entire shelves of product while kids sit there on the sideline and watch this happen, and now they can't buy any Pokemon cards. I've even seen videos where the parents were like, you understand you're doing whatever you're doing, can we at least get a pack or get some stuff so we can, and these people are ruthless, awful people. So I wish Pokemon would kind of stand on business and do something about this because they have the power and they've done small things, but I do think they need to, instead of worrying about making sure that the trading card store, the local LGS, changes its name, puts in a cease and desist. Maybe they should focus on these scalpers that are ruining the hobby for a lot of the fans that made them as popular and as financially successful as they are. Maybe that's just my opinion. We'll see. Anyways, that's it for the would be neat section of the podcast. Next up, I wanted to talk about my predictions. Now, full transparency, going into this, I had 5. I have 4 now because one of my predictions had to do with the new Pokemon TCG Pocket set that would be coming out at the end of the month. And as I was typing it out and getting ready to record this, it was revealed by Cerebi.net that the new set is Paldean Evolved. I don't remember. I read it once, but anyways, it's a set focus on Paldea, and my whole prediction was because of Pokemon Z to A, it was a Pokemon Legends Z to A that it was going to be a set focus on Gen 6. I was wrong about that. No point to put a prediction when we already know the information about that set. And weirdly enough, that set is releasing the day before Pokemon Day, releasing on February 26th. So that's rather odd. I would assume that they would save that announcement for Pokemon Day, but maybe, hey, optimist outlook. Maybe it's so jam packed that they're like, oh, we'll get this news out beforehand. There was also some news about the original Kanto Legendary Bird Trio coming to Pokemon Unite. So maybe they are getting some of the smaller announcements out of the way so they don't take up too much time with what, fingers crossed, is a pretty dope 30th anniversary Pokemon Day set of announcements. So let's get to them. I have 4 in total, like I said before. Number 1, new versions of the 2004 Kanto region remakes will be revealed, coming to Switch 2 as individually purchased titles. I'm not sure if they'll be enhanced ports or remakes with the new art style, but if I personally had to bet on one, I'd put money on them being enhanced ports with home support and other integrations to bring it into the modern era. The leaks and rumors for this are interesting because we have some people saying they are going to be ports of Fire Red and Leaf Green. We have some people speculating and teasing Blastoise being involved. It's very curious. I wonder. I do see a world in which we get Fire Red, Leaf Green, and like Drop Water. The water one is funny because you would assume that they could just call it, I don't know, Wave Water or something, but with the new Gen 10 games, which we'll get to later, being called Wind and Wave, that's not really likely. But I could see a world in which they, to celebrate the 30th anniversary, alongside these ports or remakes or whatever they are for Fire Red and Leaf Green, is a blue version to give Blastoise some love. Because to me, I know people are going to hate, Kanto isn't the only generation that exists, not the only region. Sure. But it's nostalgia bait. It's the 30th anniversary. Their core of people who have the most disposable income right now are millennials, and millennials are very strongly attached to Kanto and to some extent Johto as well. So I see this being the case. Some people are like, oh, why don't they just release them in a Nintendo Switch online service? Why don't they come in a bundle? Why don't they give us the first 3 generations in a bundle? The answer to that is money. They know that they can release these as individual titles, people will buy them, and they'll make money hand over fist. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. It'd be great to get a collection of all of these different games, and maybe one day they do that with the unedited versions of the original games. But if we're getting remakes or updated ports, it gives them enough of an excuse to, stamp a price tag on it and charge us. Because us suckers, the Pokemon community, and just gamers in general, will purchase them. My second prediction. They announced the first feature-length film since Secrets of the Jungle was released on Christmas of 2020. Yes, there hasn't been an animated Pokemon film in over 5 years. That's crazy. Obviously, the whole COVID situation likely played a factor in this. But I wonder if they got to a place in which, especially with, spoilers, the anime switching over to a new main protagonist, they didn't know what to do with it. They also, before Secret of the Jungle, tried doing a weird remake with 3D animation of the original movie, which didn't really land well with fans. We're in an interesting place with Pokemon because the anime keeps going, but there's no films. And I remember as a kid, the films being a celebration. You get a little bit higher quality animation, and it feels more grandiose. It was an event. You got to go to the movie theater. Maybe they're using this 6-year reset to kind of gestate renewed interest in the series, and I would love to see a new, and I do think they're going to show a trailer or a tease for the next feature-length film. And my thing is, I think it's going to be Liko, the new main protagonist in the anime that took over for Horizons. I think she's going to be the main protagonist of this movie, and it's going to be her first movie. And they're going to kind of treat this 30th anniversary as a kickoff to the next arc of Pokemon. No more, Ash will still be there, but he's more of a legacy character, and Liko will be the main person moving forward. And I do think that the show has been written well enough to where she and her gang deserve their own movie, and I really hope that happens. My third prediction. A live action project gets revealed, whether it's Detective Pikachu to something surrounding Ash's story or something else. I think it'll be announced, and it'll be in partnership with Netflix. Pokemon has been in bed with Netflix for a while now. It's one of the easiest places to find a lot of the Pokemon content, whether it's Concierge, the anime, so on and so forth. I do think with the way Netflix has started collaborating with these anime properties, whether that be, well, technically an anime, it's a Western animation, but the Avatar series, we have One Piece, and I do think they want to get in on the Pokemon game. And we've heard about Detective Pikachu 2 or a follow up being kind of in development hell for a number of years. So I guess my prediction is a live action project announced, and more specifically, it is a partnership with Netflix. Personally, I would love a follow up to Detective Pikachu. I hope it's a movie and not a show, but knowing Netflix, it'll probably be closer to a show. We'll see what happens. Now, next up, obviously, we have Generation 10 on the horizon, Pokemon Wind and Pokemon Wave. I have a couple of predictions here specifically for this title. One, I think it's going to visually impress. I think when people see this game, they're going to be like, wow, this is a Pokemon game. Awesome. I think there might still be frame rate issues, but on a purely visual aspect, I think this game is going to look gorgeous. Textures, environments. I do think they're going to put their all into this because they really want to celebrate the 30th anniversary. I think the developers want to prove themselves. The last couple of titles, there have been a lot of questions of, is it that they don't have enough time to develop? Are they just not that talented? Are they not given the budget? All of these questions, and I do think at some point these developers do one of two things, and they're either like, well, give us time, give us the resources, we want to show people what we can really do, or two, screw that, we are talented, we're going to show them what we can really do. And I've enjoyed almost every Pokemon release that has come out. Obviously, some much better than others. But at the end of the day, I really do think that they can make some leaps that people want and to some extent demand. And they do make so much money as a franchise that it is, I wouldn't say a tipping point. I think it's a little bit too extreme. But we are at a point in which something needs to be done. Something needs to happen. Where it's the Pokemon community deserves better, not only from the new generation releases, but from I liked Pokemon Legends Z to A, but we need to fix the way they texture buildings. We need to fix the way they implement details in a world. We need to fix performance issues. We need to fix just a lot of different elements of the games need to be fixed. And all that being said, I think when we first see this game, the general consensus is going to be, wow, this looks very impressive visually. My second one is that it will have minimal voice acting. I think there will be aspects of this in which maybe it's just the professor that talks. Maybe it's just your companion that talks. I highly doubt the main character, the avatar that you create, will be able to vocally communicate with the world around them. But I do think that we're going to have some. It's going to be substantial in that it's going to be much more than we have had in a Pokemon game, but it's going to be minimal in terms of what you'd expect from a AAA release. That's how I'll phrase that. But I do think it's going to have voice acting. Whether that voice acting is well acted or not, who knows? But I do think it'll have it. I think that'll be one of the things they point to as like the next generation of Pokemon titles. We're hearing you loud and clear, and now you're going to hear our story with actual voice acting. Next up, this is the one that's kind of out there. I'm going to predict loosely what the 3 starters are. So the water starter, I think, is going to be a mammal. I think that mammals lend themselves often to the most universally loved designs in Pokemon. And I do think with this being, a generation that has a lot of islands, a lot of water, shout out IGN, I do think they're going to want to showcase the water starter and have them be the favorite going in. So I do think that the water starter is going to be a mammal of some sort. And I guess I'll rephrase that as a generally assumed land mammal, not a whale or something. I think it'll be a land mammal that happens to be a water type. Next up, the grass starter, I think, will be a flying dual type. So it'll be grass flying, and this kind of goes with the wind and wave. I think we got the wave with the islands and the water, and we got the wind with obviously the wind. And for some reason I just feel as if the grass starter will be the dual type. Wouldn't shock me if the fire starter ends up being the dual type, but I'm gonna put my money down on the grass starter being a flying dual type. What will it be? Who knows? A bat, something else that flies? No clue. Maybe like a wyvern or some type of dragon. That'd be pretty neat. And it's a grass flying, and then it eventually becomes a grass dragon in its final evo. Maybe. And then the last one, I think the fire type will be a bug or reptile. This one is kind of tough because we had Fuecoco, who was like a dinosaur. So I don't know if they double dip on the reptile aspect, but maybe it's like a bug. Who knows? Generally, a lot of them tend to have themes. Like we had, we had Superior, Empoleon, and Embor, and they were all kind of regal final evolutions. So I'm very curious to see what the theme across the board is for these ones. But yeah, that's my lock. Water starter, mammal, land mammal, grass starter, flying dual type, and the fire starter will be a bug or reptile. We'll see what happens. I'm very curious to see which one I'll like most. I typically tend to fall in love with the grass starters, but you never know. If I had to be a betting man, I will say if the grass starter ends up being a dual flying type, those tend not to be my favorite, unless it obviously turns into a dragon type like I talked about. So I think I'm going to put my money on the water starter will be my favorite of the bunch. And on next week's podcast, I'll talk about which one I enjoyed most and which one is my favorite going in, provided we know the final evolutions, because that's a big part of which starter I end up picking and going with. And lastly, the last thing I'm going to be predicting. So here's the deal. GTA 6 is currently set to release on November 19th, 2026. I am of the opinion, like I said in the most anticipated games of 2026 conversation on the podcast I had a couple of weeks ago, I do not believe that game is coming out this year. I think it's getting delayed. In a world in which it gets delayed, I do think it releases Pokemon Wind and Wave on November 20th. Typically, they tend to like to release the second, third week of November for the main generation games. That would be the 20th. Now, in the world in which GTA does come out on the 19th, I do think as popular as Pokemon is, it is dumb to just release on the same day. So maybe they'd either kick a week after or a week before. My money would be on a week before. So I'm saying that, and because I'm just going to go against myself, the release date will be the 13th, because they're going to set the release date with expectations that GTA does come out this year. They can't really plan on, it is getting delayed. That's not how companies work. So I'm going to call my shot. November 13th is the release date for Pokemon Wind and Wave. And I also am curious to see if that ends up being the final names. Obviously, all the leaks, the Terra leaks and everything have said, this is the name. And it's very interesting to see what happens. So that's my predictions. I wanted to touch on the stuff I played this week before we head out. So, first up, Drop Duchy. I talked about this a little bit last week with Mike and Max. I enjoyed my time with this fun amalgamation of Tetris meets base building meets roguelite. But the grindiness felt like it would require too much investment for me to make substantial progress in terms of, seeing it through to the completionist's end. It is a very fun game. I could see myself coming back to it. It scratches a part of my brain that I really love. It has you strategize, it has you focus, it has you making decisions. And like I said last week, the progression is tactile and evident every time you restart a new run. I really enjoyed this game. Didn't even hear about it last year. So it's really cool to see the quote unquote like Game of the Year final edition make its way over to Xbox Game Pass and give me an opportunity to check this out. I originally just saw that it looked like a Tetris-like, and I was like, oh, that's fun enough. I'll check that out. And then all of the military strategy roguelite elements of it, I had no clue. And hopping in blind was really fun. So shout out to Sleepy Mill Studio on Drop Duchy. A really fun game. If you have Xbox Game Pass, or if you see it on Steam, possibly on a sale, I would check it out if you're at all interested in Tetris games, or Tetris likes. Next up, the Overwatch revamp, right? Blizzard announced that during their presentation, they showcased Overwatch's rebirth in a sense, dropping the 2, introducing 5 new heroes, basically making it so every year is its own self-contained story that players can keep up with. They even have a section of the game, user experience, user interface, where you can keep up on the actual narrative of the game. And I was excited. The community rallied behind it. Despite dropping back into the gameplay, like it was my bicycle I had as a teenager that I hadn't ridden in a number of years, but felt so comforting to be back on the seat of, it just came so naturally. I do find myself with plenty of the same issues that plagued me in Overwatch and in many other multiplayer experiences these days. I'm a 34-year-old man, right? Not a young gun. I'm 34 years old. I have no consistent play group. I have plenty of friends, but as adults, some of them have kids, some of them are married, some of them are just busy. It's hard. We're not teenagers anymore. We can't just be like, hey, let's hop on tonight for 5 hours. It's just not how life works as you get older. And as much as these games like to tell you can play with people or solo and it's the same experience, it's not. Part of that is because it's hard to non-verbally communicate and be successful. Sure, Overwatch and many other games have the tools in place, but it just doesn't work as well as actively communicating with people in a party. It just doesn't. And lastly, this is more of a personal issue. I wouldn't put this on the game, but the sheer amount of characters feels daunting to hop back into. And I feel myself playing the old favorites and not branching out for fear of letting the team down. I don't want to try testing out and learning how to play a new character and then get complained at because I'm not playing the character correctly. So I'm going back to the characters I know because I can competently add to my team's success rate that way. So that's been an issue. I really love the gameplay of Overwatch. I love the world. I love the heroes. It's just tough because it's hard for me personally to justify spending time on multiplayer games. And this goes back to my personal competitive outlook on things. If I'm playing a multiplayer game and I'm enjoying it, I want to play the competitive parts of that game. I want to play ranked. I do this with Magic the Gathering Arena. I'm not going to be playing the unranked stuff. I want to play ranked. I want to test myself against people. And with Overwatch, you can't play competitive without a party, in my opinion. I've tried it. It is not great. I'm left here wondering if I'm going to continue playing Overwatch or if it was just a flash in the pan for me. Got the excitement, the rush of the new announcement, and then kind of falling off. It's a bummer. I know people enjoy it, but I'm just one of the people that I just, unfortunately, for whatever reason, don't have a play group. And, it's neat, but I just don't know if the multiplayer world is for me anymore until I possibly find another play group that can maybe meet once a week and play a specific game, because outside of that, I'd rather spend my time playing a single player title that I can get enjoyment out of based on my own experiences. It is what it is. It's not really a knock too much on Overwatch. It's more about the world in which gamers live gaining responsibility and just life coming at them fast. So it's a bummer, but gaming habits change as you get older. Gaming taste changes as you get older. And it is what it is. I wanted to say thank you for checking out the Controlled Interests Gamecast. Link to our socials, including BlueSky as well as the podcast audio feeds, can be found in the YouTube description. Please check out The Very Best, my monthly Pokemon interview podcast. Episode 1 with Max Roberts is currently live, and Episode 2 featuring Logan Moore of comicbook.com will be released in the coming weeks, so look out for that. I want to apologize. This is an episode on the shorter end. As a solo podcast, it's hard for me to go on and justify just talking for talking's sake. So I don't think it's that short of an episode. Usually I like to hit around an hour. That's a little bit harder when I don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of and have a conversation with. But hopefully you enjoyed it nonetheless. Let us know, please, what your predictions are for Pokemon Day 2026 and the 30th anniversary. And we will catch you next week. Bye.